Hello, hello. It is Wednesday, December 11th, and a lot has happened since those practice games I played with Anthony. Namely, I've played my first USCF rated tournament, as this thing is not focusing. Played my first USCF rated tournament for regular slash quick, whatever those definitions really mean. I don't know, but whatever. And then Tuesday, I didn't actually get to play any league games just because I was only there for a very short amount of time. I had to do some other stuff, but finally we can come in and look at the USCF rated games, and I'll take you through how those went. So, hopping straight into it here. Don't ask why I'm using Lichess. I don't know. Not that it really matters because it's still a board. So, me and Anthony get there. We're talking. We're kind of just like mentally preparing and everything. And the section we're in is called the championship section, which is meant for any adult, regardless of age or rating. So that would be me. And the other qualification was like over 1,000, I think. Something like that. So I was in the championship section, but then because the advanced section, which is like the one below it, only had 2 people registered that day, they actually combined those 2 sections. So I ended up playing some different amount of people as I realized that my desktop audio is not working. So I'm going to set that up while I ramble some more. And it would not be a tournament. It would not be the start to my it wouldn't be the start to my USCF climb if I didn't play Anthony in the first goddamn round of my tournament career. Like, what are the odds that me and him, we enter and we get paired against each other? Like, he already has a regular and quick rating, so it's not because we're provisional. But it was just like, okay, what are the fucking odds? Like, okay, sure. I don't know why I didn't have it in the PGN here, but I also don't really know how to change it. I can't seem to find where to change that. So, maybe one of these days I'll fix it. But for now, this is what we have. So just know I am playing against Anthony. Maybe I'll, like, in post, put it, like, up here where it should be. So we start the game. And of course, I'm gonna play e4, and I know his. I knew he was gonna play a French. Like he doesn't play anything else, right? So here I was thinking. So recently I've played the Schlechter against him with Bishop d3. I played Knight d2. I was actually really considering playing the advanced French, but I also didn't really super know how to play the position after e5. To be completely honest, so what I decided with was just Knight d2. I vaguely remember most of the lines, and I also know the line that he's going to go into, which is d takes, Knight d7, Knight f3, Knight gf6, Knight takes f6, Knight takes f6, and this is kind of like the first move where I am out of prep. Well, no, this is the last move this is the last move before I'm out of prep. We've played this position 2 or 3 times already. Admittedly in rapid, not in... I guess this is still technically rapid, but not in 25 delay 5. So, everything... We played this sequence out, I wouldn't say instantly. I did think for a second on what I really wanted to play here. Right, like I said, I had these 2 options, even e5. I could even play Knight c3, but I don't know if he has a different response against Knight c3. So we get to this position, and then he plays Bishop d7, which is, in my opinion, a small improvement to what he's played previously. Previously, he played c6, kicking my bishop away, which makes sense. And then after Bishop d3, the game goes on, but I argued that if you're going to play c6, your light squared bishop has, like, no room. Like, you can't even go out this way. And if you want to fianchetto it, you would need another turn to push c5 so that it actually has vision. So that was the idea with bishop b5, but then he plays bishop d7. And in this position, I remembered there was something in my notes. There was some kind of position where I wanted to push a4. And I couldn't remember exactly why, but I knew it was in my notes somewhere. So I was thinking for a while, maybe like a few minutes, not even a few minutes. I was thinking, why would I want to play a4 here? I couldn't remember. I knew I wanted to provoke a6, but then I was like, wait, why am I provoking a6? It's just protected by b6 or b7. So I was like, why am I trying to provoke a6 again? Like, this doesn't make sense. I realized after the fact that the reason I played bishop b5 check initially was actually in a slightly different position, where I would play something like c3, and then he would play b6, because stylistically speaking, he likes fianchettoing his light squared bishop. Even in like d4 openings, he likes doing this idea. So the reason I wanted to play a4 was that after b6, bishop here, bishop blocks, a4 now makes a little more sense, because if you want to kick my bishop away with a6, now it's a small target that I can try to attack after something like this, bishop e7, or even bishop d6, queen e2, and now I'm pressuring this pawn here. This bishop is not so easy to defend the pawn. You may have to play queen c8, but you know, if you're playing queen c8 to defend this pawn, then like you're really not doing much with it later in the game. So this is what I was trying to remember, but I couldn't remember in the moment. So after bishop d7, I thought for a little while, and I just discarded a4. I was like, okay, let me not play that, right? Because I can't remember why. So I was thinking I can go back to d3. I can play queen d3 instead, or even queen e2. And I couldn't really figure out the difference between queen d3 and queen e2, let alone bishop d3. But after some time, I figured, all right, I'm going to play queen e2. Maybe in the future, it'll support something on e5, like my knight. So I was like, okay, queen e2. He does play a6, like I kind of anticipated, but there's less of a justification for me provoking that move. So I just continue with bishop d3. He dubs with bishop d6. I play bishop g5, kind of pinning the knight to the queen in a weird way. And then he played h6. And here I was really thinking, do I want to take? Do I want to take, or do I want to go to h4? So one of the reasons that I didn't really consider in the game, but should have, was if I take, and let's say he takes with the queen, I can play c3. I've replaced my dark squared bishop with pawns on dark squares. So, you know, strategically or positionally, this makes a lot of sense. Also, my dark squared bishop may be less useful because I'm going to play c3 and play this kind of structure. So maybe it made a lot more sense to trade it off rather than doing what I did in the game. I should also mention, if he ever plays g takes, I'm just going to castle queenside and not have to deal with an attack on my king. So what I did in game was played bishop h4, maintaining the pin. And here I was like, okay, well, if I ever do go back to g3, it's fine. And if you push g5, I will obviously move back, take back if he trades, and then queenside castle. He was asking me after the game, like, I was surprised. He was surprised that I didn't castle for so long. And it was because of exactly this. I wanted to develop first and see what would happen, because you want to kick my bishop out, all right? And if for whatever reason you play g5, then I'm going to just castle the opposite way and not have to deal with an attack on my king. He plays queen e7. So now I'm like, oh, you might want a long castle too. But after queen e7, I played knight e5. So I'm jumping my knight into the center. If he takes, I take here, and now his knight he's going to lose his knight. I could also trade off the light squared bishop, which isn't really doing much right now, so I didn't see a need to do that. But knight e5 just is, you know, it looked like a good move. putting my pieces towards the center, controlling some space. So I was like, okay, sure. Now he plays g5. And now I'm like, okay, so I see what's going on here. Obviously, bishop g3, and now long castle, long castle. Apparently, bishop takes a6 was the best move. But I was just like, yeah, whatever. He plays knight d5, and here I was really trying to cook up some plan. So what I really wanted to play initially was c4. He can't go to b6 because I fork. He could go here, but then I play c5 anyway, and now your bishop is trapped. So you would have to play something like knight b4, attacking my bishop, kind of, and hitting my pawn. I could play something like this, takes, and go from here. But I was also considering, instead of playing a3, I was also considering playing c5 anyway again, right? And now it's like a weird capture chain. Here, take, and then something like this. And I didn't really know how much better this position was for me. I definitely had some slight weaknesses on my king, but I thought this position was like okay at best. So I just played queen f3. And the reason I played queen f3 was there was two ideas. If the knight ever moves, so let's just say something like that, I have a sneaky idea of taking on a6, and you can't take back because then it's mate. So I was like, okay, let me try to kick this bishop away, and then, or kick the knight away. I'll win a free pawn, and your king side gets a little weaker, and maybe I can like slowly chip away at his position. But then he plays, so I played queen f3 for that. He plays f5, and of course this was a big blunder. And let me see if you can figure out why. But the move here is knight g6. So he blundered the fork. And I was like, okay, I should be now in a really good position. He plays queen g7. Obviously, he's not going to let his queen go away for free. And here I missed a resource that he had to kind of counteract this whole idea, which was after I take the knight on h8, f4. So I totally missed f4, and I thought this was a great move from him because now I'm going to lose my bishop. So I was like, okay, well, I might have to go down 2 pieces for the rook, and I was like, okay, I guess that's fine. So I took, and he takes back with check, and I move my king, and then he takes back my knight. So I was like, okay, it's rook for knight, or sorry, it's rook for bishop knight. I should still be in this game. Obviously, the computer says, no, you're losing, which I didn't realize at the time. And I kept playing this position. I thought I was equal, but apparently I was much worse. Additionally, bishop takes f4 was the blunder, which both of us missed in the game. More accurately, I missed the fact that I could have taken here first, and then if he takes my knight, I can just retreat back to like a3 or something. Or, yeah, probably a3. And then maybe I'll have to play like b3, bishop b2, and if the knight comes in, then it's going to be a little annoying, but whatever. Right now I'm just up at peace, and everything is good. So I missed the fact that I had to take this bishop first, which I think kind of crossed my mind briefly, but I just like kind of forgot about it. But furthermore, after taking the rook and he plays f4, I don't even have to desperado my bishop. I can actually play knight g6 and maintain my advantage, because now after something like takes, this is protected. I can escape to e5, and I'm up in exchange. So I didn't see this part as well. I could have been up in exchange for real by not taking on f4 and just bringing my bishop back, since the f-pawn moving now allows my bishop to protect the knight. So I missed a few things there, and now I just have a worse position. So I continued the game, and keep in mind, even though it says it's like -2, -3 almost, I still think this is an equal game, just a little difficult. So I kick his bishop out, I play c4. So I was kind of going back to my original plan of trying to take this pawn here. After c4, rook f8, I played queen g2. I thought this just made sense. I'm staying on this diagonal to keep my original plan. And this pawn is protected. So knight b4, like I expected. After some thought, I was like, I don't want to give him the option of trading off my bishop, so I just wanted to move it out of the way. There are also some other threats in this position because my my pawn might be loose. Well, my pawn's loose right now, actually. And then maybe in the future, this pawn might become a liability because I can't actually protect it very easily. So I went with bishop e4, bishop c6. I didn't really want to trade pieces all too much. Maybe I should have, but after something like here, who's really better here? You have 2 pieces for the rook still. I can get my rook into the game, but it wasn't so clear if this was even better for me. So I wanted to just keep pieces on the board and maintain the current status quo. So we traded. I take back on e4, and he plays knight c6. And now I figured, okay, well, I have 3 pawns in the center, so like this is kind of good, right? Granted, he has minor pieces to help defend if I can somehow get a pawn pass, so it's a little easier for him because he can use a knight to defend my pawn push, whereas I need to commit a rook to advance the pawn forward. So that's kind of like the imbalance. That's the dynamic of this position where he has more pieces, but I have a stronger individual piece. If you can coordinate the 2 pieces against the rook, then it should be stronger in my opinion, but it's not so simple. I played d5, and after some trading, I was like, okay, well, now I have a passed pawn. This is what I'm going to play for in the game. And then he hit me with 95, and I was like, oh, that's not good. So now my pawn's blockaded, and I don't have any dark squared piece to really get rid of this blockade. So I didn't totally notice that in time, which is bad for me. Rook hf1, contesting the file. He gets out of the way, so I thought I had something at least. And after rook f5, he played knight c4. And yes, these are a bunch of arrows here, and I didn't realize how bad my position was until this point here. So looking at the green arrows, you can see that there's a triple fork being threatened with knight e3. So this would attack both my rooks and my queen. Furthermore, he's also threatening mate with just simply queen takes b2. So I can't actually move my queen off of the second rank right now. So then the question becomes, how do I stop this while also making sure that this is not a threat? And the move I found was queen f2. Right, so now this fork I can counterattack with rook f7. And after he moves his queen, assuming he's going to move his queen, I can move my rook out of the way to like maybe d2 or e1 or something like that. He plays bishop c5, trying to kick my queen again. Again, I cannot take because he has mate. So I counterattack his queen with rook f7. He moves his queen out of the way. And I was really trying to find a way in, but I just felt like my position is just getting worse and worse. I decided to trade queens here, which, now that I think about it, was probably a mistake because as we keep trading pieces, he's just basically going to have, 3 pieces versus 2, except it's like bishop knight for rook. And it's going to be easy for him, slightly easier for him to create threats with weaker, well, I mean, obviously he's going to create threats with weaker pieces, but the main imbalance is that I need to coordinate my rooks to create big threats, whereas he can use a smaller piece to create threats. But of course, the smaller pieces aren't as strong, so it might take more time for him to create threats. So that's the whole imbalance of the game. And it was hard to play ever since that whole knight fork. I misplayed me getting the fork. So going back to the current position, he takes my queen, obviously, because he has to. And here I was really considering, do I want to take with the pawn or do I want to take with the rook? So what I did in game was take with the rook. I didn't want to take with the pawn because of rook e2, and now his rook is just like coming into the game pretty handily, and it's gonna like cause even more problems in my position. Right, so I figured, okay, so that looks pretty bad for me. If I take with the rook, he still wins my pawn. Well, in this line, which is what happened in the game, he wins my pawn, but the difference is that I have one more move to play something like rook c1. And I thought rook c1 was a clever move because it's kind of forking or double attacking the knight and the bishop. Because if the knight moves, I take his rook. There's no back rank. You basically can't move your rook because well, I would take the knight. And I'm also threatening b3. He plays a good move though, knight d2. He gets out of the way with check, meaning I have to move my king. I briefly considered rook c2, or sorry, king c2, but that just didn't look right to me. I don't know, I just felt like I was going to get dragged into the open and beaten mercilessly, so I didn't play king e2. King c2, I played king a1. And after b3, defending his bishop that's still under attack, I'm trying to desperately get counterplay, but I can definitely feel that I have a much worse position because all of his pieces are attacking my king, and I can't really do anything to him, right? I need both of my rooks to attack his king, but if my rook leaves, then I have no defense on my king, and I'm probably going to get mated. So I'm trying to win his pawns on the queen side, or I guess the king side technically, because the kings usually start here. But yeah, I'm trying to just like gain tempo on his pieces. I should also mention I have like no time. There is a 5-second delay for each move, so I'm basically living off of delay. And after rook e2, this is where I stopped taking notes. I think I had 30 seconds on my clock, or maybe under a minute actually. So I stopped taking notes in this position, and I don't really have the rest of it, unfortunately. But the game did go on for another like 10, 15, maybe even 20 moves. And the funny story is that we were actually holding up the next round because we were still playing and we were the last ones. Two of the, I don't know if they're officially called arbiters or whatever, but two of the tournament runners, two of the TOs, tournament organizers, were just like standing behind me. So like imagine I'm playing like on the board here. They were both just like standing behind me and him. They're just like watching our game, and you know, I'm in a lost position because I actually blundered my rook later in this game. I'm in a lost position, and I'm just like trying to play for a stalemate because I had no more pawn mobility at that point in the game, and he was very close to checkmating me, but if I played it right, I think there was a chance I could have stalemated it. So I was hoping for that, but I didn't realize that he actually just had the mate in one move. I thought he needed one more tempoed before he would get it, and then I got checkmated. So Anthony did win this game after another 20 moves, and yeah, the two TOs were there. I was like saying like, wow, that was a crazy game. I would imagine that, you know, they're much stronger than we are, and they probably saw what my idea was, and what, like, considering the fact I was still playing after being down a whole rook, and not even for any of these pieces. I was just like straight up down a full rook from this position. So I guess I would assume that they saw what I was going for, but I just missed the mate. And I was also, the last like 10 moves or 15 moves, I literally had 1 second on my clock, but again, there's a 5-second delay before the timer ticks, so I was living off of that. But needless to say, I eventually blundered again and lost the game. So yeah, it was a fun game. It was kind of hilarious that we would get paired against each other in round one. In my first USCF quick/regular round. So GG's to Anthony. Hopefully I'll play him again and beat him next time, but we'll see. We can go straight into game numero 2, if I can figure out how to edit this damn thing. Round 2, I have the white pieces again. I am playing against a younger kid Bulat. I don't know how old he was. I can check, but I don't really care to check. He was actually late to the round for some reason. I didn't know where he was. The TO said you can start your clocks. They walked up to me because my opponent wasn't next to me or in front of me. He's like, yeah, you can start your clock and make the first move if you like. I waited for like a minute. He still wasn't there. So I was just like, all right, whatever. I'm going to start his clock. I played e4. And I just sat there for another 2 minutes. The other 2 rounds were going. And eventually he came in, sat down, shook my hand, and we were off. So I was sitting like this, just like looking around, like just waiting. He eventually arrived. So like he only was down 2 minutes or something. Not a big deal. He also played the French. So I was just like, oh boy. So we get to this position, of course, and again, I was thinking, do I want to play bishop d3 or do I want to play knight d2? I went with knight d2. He definitely took a little bit to think. I'm guessing he hasn't seen the Tarrasch before. For context, as a small aside, when I first started learning chess, the first opening that I learned as black was the French. And the one line that I feel like most instructional videos would teach was the advanced French, which is e5. It's a very principled move. You're gaining more space as white. You're restricting black's knight a little bit. It just makes a lot of sense. So I imagine when he saw knight d2 on the board, he was like, that's interesting and that's weird. Now, the one problem for me was that I hadn't looked at my Tarrasch notes prior to this because I didn't know what people played, so I didn't want to over prepare for one thing and like not something else. And I remembered when I was walking home, I was like, I totally could have predicted people played the French. Like, especially younger kids, they probably are going to learn the French, if not e4, e5. So I was just like, all right, I probably could have expected, I probably could have prepared some more, but too late now. He played knight f6, and here I knew a few moves afterwards of theory. E5 now makes a lot of sense, of course, because you're going to kick the knight. So knight f d7, knight f3, knight g f3, c5, c3, knight c6, bishop d3. So after queen b6 is where I was like truly just not entirely sure how to proceed. And I know against the French, I keep losing the d4 pawn for some reason. And it's funny because I play the Caro Kann and I put pressure on d4. So I know it from the black side, but I don't know it from the white side, which is really funny. But nevertheless, there wasn't really a way for me to add another defender with my current setup to the d4 pawn, right? If I go knight b3, I get forked. I'm definitely not taking because this just looks awful. So I was just like, okay, well, I'm probably just going to lose the pawn. That's fine. I'll figure it out from there. So we trade. He takes the pawn, takes back with the queen. Thankfully, I found knight f3, which both defends the pawn and attacks the queen. So you can't capture the pawn with the queen. You have to move it back. And he plays queen b6 back. To my surprise, when I was inputting this game into Lichess, I was looking at the Masters database. And what I noticed was in this position, there are 290 Masters games in this position already. 71% of which are queen a4. And I didn't know this, to be honest, and I was really surprised. So I guess this is something I can look into. I can also what I realized when I was looking back at some of my notes was another idea after instead of knight gf3, you can actually play knight e2. Knight e2 is also another idea to defend d4. And you're like, how does that defend d4? Well, after c5, c3, knight c6, you can play knight df3, or I guess just knight f3. And now you've reached this structure. Granted, you haven't developed your bishop yet, so maybe you want to do that first. So maybe like this first. Or sorry, here. Now, these two knights are defending the pawn here, so it's 1, 2, 3 attackers versus 1, 2, 3 defenders. So now I'm not losing the pawn. This is another way to play. I forgot about this in the game, but I knew I've seen this idea before, and I just didn't remember until later. So after I castled, we have this full exchange on d4. I played knight f3, queen b6, and then I played b3. b3 just moved the pawn forward, so it's defended by this pawn, so that can move this bishop. So something like bishop b2. He plays bishop c5, which I thought was fine. And then I played bishop b2. And after a small think, I was like, oh my god, wait a second. And I'll let you pause here. Do you see what I see? Do you see the move that I want him to play? And do you see the follow-up on why I want him to play that move? So the move I want him to play, which is a totally natural move, and feels like one of the few moves in this position that you can even sensibly do, is castle. But castling is a huge mistake. Why? Castling's a huge mistake because of a very common tactical idea. Bishop takes h7. Greek gift sacrifice. And I remember sitting in this position after he castled and I was trying to calculate all the lines, and I caught most of the obvious ones, but I guess I'll go through it and explain what I mean. So I played bishop takes h7. I gave myself a brilliant move, by the way, and it's not actually Lichess giving me a brilliant move. And he looked at the move and he was like, he just stared at it for like 5 seconds. He's like, what? But anyway, so he was just like, he looked stunned, like, what? He's just sacrificing his bishop. And if you don't know the Greek gift sacrifice idea, you can pause the video here. What happens after king takes? So after king takes, and I guess before I say what happens after king takes, what if you don't take the bishop? I just go back. And now I've just won a pawn. So simple as that. If you do take the bishop, I play knight g5 check. In the game, he played king g8. But I was really trying to figure out what to do after king g6 or even king h6. Now, intuitively, it looks bad because you're like bringing your king into the open. But I don't actually have a way to bring my queen all the way in where I want it to go because he can just take. And same thing here, he can just take. And I knew queen g4 was one of the ideas. I just couldn't remember the rest of it. I was like trying to look at like what happens if he plays f6. You know, what if he does... Geez, I don't even know what else he could do in this position as black here. But this is what I was concerned about. But I was thinking, I'm just going to figure it out if the position gets to that point. But he did play king g8, so I played queen h5. Now that the threat is queen h7 mate. You have to move your rook to either e8 or d8 to give your king some breathing room. He played rook d8, which is actually mate in 6. He was supposed to play this, to which queen f7, king h8. I win the rook. He has to block with the knight. It is protected, so I can't take it. And I'm supposed to continue with bishop d4, trying to dislodge it. But then after bishop d7, bishop d7 counterattacking. I'm just looking at the computer, by the way. Oh, I win the other rook, and it's probably just came over from here. You're down 2 rooks. But he played rook d8. I played queen f7 check, queen h8, or king h8. I didn't actually play the correct move here to continue the forced mate. The forced mate is actually coming back. I saw this, but I didn't see what the reason was to do it now. Like, I didn't see the difference on why I didn't just play queen takes h7 immediately. And the idea is here, 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 here. You can't go this way. And with the... Let me go back the right way. The difference with this is What was the difference here? Oh, he has the d8 square for his king. That's the difference. And if I try to go check, he's technically surviving. So that was the difference. I calculated something else after this, and I couldn't remember what. Yeah, I couldn't remember what I was seeing after this move, but he played rook d8. I didn't see the mate in 6. I just took here because I was like, me threatened mate, and me attack rook. So logically, as black, he played rook g8 first. And it's a very logical move in the sense that it gets the rook out of danger, and it prevents the mate on g7. The problem is, it doesn't stop this mate. So I did eventually win because of this rook g8 blunder. And the difference is that because you move your rook to g8, you can't move your king to that square. That's what he overlooked. I was totally expecting, and I think I did see this as well, this idea of queen h5 mate. I was expecting bishop f1 here, or sorry, bishop f8 here. I would probably take the rook, and then something like this, and just play this position here. But yeah, he missed the fact that rook g8 would be mate on h5. So I did get my first win after the second round. It's just, man, I wish I beat Anthony. But going back to that critical position, or maybe not critical, but going to this position, I looked at it and it was just like, this is a prime, like, dream position to go for the Greek gift sacrifice. Greek gift sacrifice. Because the main thing that stops this idea is something covering the g5 square, if it's like a bishop or a queen or whatever. So, had he played bishop e7 and we played the same moves, right? This doesn't quite work now because he can take. Now, if my bishop wasn't on that square and I played, I don't know, e1, it's like, now it's a trade, but now I've lost my attack, right? Because after something like this, I have to rook lift, and it's probably a little too slow. You can move your rook out of the way and start escaping, something like that. Maybe play f6. So that's the main reason the Greek gift actually worked. There wasn't actually anything to stop my knight from going to g5 after the bishop sacrifice. Pretty instructive on that tech. Okay, moving on to round number 3. I am playing against Brian Hooper, who seems to be someone's father. I also didn't realize that in the very upper left corner, you could actually see the result of this game. So I added a little purple square to block it. And I'm trying to get the size perfectly right, but whatever. Yeah, so I'm going to have to edit that in post. And you'll probably see a black box in there as well. So I finally have the black pieces, and all I know, I don't know anything about him. All I know is that he was someone's father after the game. Yeah, so anyway, he played d4, which is the last thing I wanted to see. In between rounds 2 and 3, we were waiting for the round pairing, and I was talking to Anthony. I was like, I still feel really uncomfortable against d4, not because of the... Well, I feel uncomfortable against d4 because I don't actually always like the games that I get out of it, and I refuse to play d4, d5. So that kind of limits a lot of my options. I went with knight f6 just because it's what I've been playing recently. I've been thinking about playing something else, but we'll get to that when we get there. Here he plays knight c3, which kind of surprised me because most people play c4 as their second move when they play d4, and I'm not contesting c4. And I only realized until his next move. So, by the way, I'm playing a King's Indian with g6, bishop g7. He was bishop f4. I'm like, oh, right, the Jobava London. I forgot about this one. So I was like, okay, let's play against London. Let's figure it out. So pretty normal moves here. D6. And then he plays H4 immediately. And I was a little shook. I'm like, oh, God. Okay, so he's here to fight. I was expecting a very normal, just like bishop D3, knight F3, maybe a queen D2 or a queen E2. I was just like, yeah, okay, London stuff. And then he just plays H4. I was like, oh. All right. So I thought for a while, and I was like, I think I'll be okay to castle. I think I'll be fine. Computer says it's inaccurate. Whatever. Bishop D3. You know what? I'm actually going to remove these annotations because I don't agree. I played H5 to stop him from playing H5. So one of the heuristics I have, I remember from trying to learn the modern defense, which is just G6, Bishop G7 on moves 1 and 2, is that if they play H4, you can probably play H5 and it'll be fine. And if they play G4, you just need to make sure you have that square protected enough to prevent them from breaking apart your pawn structure. You also have a problem of this outpost on G5, but if you still have a knight on F6, you can drop it back to H7, try to kick it out. So I was like, all right, fine. So queen D2, knight BD7, knight F3, C5. So I'm trying to generate my own counterplay by opening up the center while he's not castled yet. If he castles short, then H4 is a little awkward. If he castles long, then I will begin playing A6, B5 and counterattacking his king. He does long castle. I played A6, which, starts the pawn storm on his king. And after rook H G1, this is where I made probably the biggest strategical mistake of the game. I was trying to stop him from pushing G4 at all costs. In my mind, if I stop G4, he has no attack. If he has no attack, I am free to do whatever I want on the king side. And I was going really hard into that idea. So I played knight G4 because I saw, oh, well, the whole idea of playing rook H G1 is to push G4. I'm going to stop G4 by blockading that. And here I thought I was doing well. I thought, okay, I've stopped his attack. And I mean, now I can play B5, C4, B4, Queen A5, and just like start attacking his king. But so he played knight G5 to start, and I quickly realized here that I was like, wait, I'm not even stopping G4, right? Because after I played, I played knight F6, knight D F6. This was, kind of like continuing into this trend of making big mistakes strategically. I'm not actually stopping G4. Like, I'm trying to, but he's still going to play it. I'm trying to overprotect the square so that he can't push it, but, he's going to have control of that square anyway, and I need to be more active with my counterplay rather than being more defensive by preventing him from attacking, because I'm not actually really preventing him from attacking. So he plays F3, I play knight H6. He totally, I was still trying to prevent G4 from happening, but I would have to sacrifice a piece and argue that this piece here is worth more than the 2 pawns that I lost for it. But he could easily do something like here, and if I trade, he does this, and after something like that. Now I'm actually just going to lose this. Now I'm actually going to lose control of G4. And then his attack actually comes in. So I just needed to be much more active with my queenside attack by just pushing the pawns and letting him come in and then just block at the last second. So F3, knight H6, he takes on C5, which I thought was kind of weird. I take back. He plays bishop C4. I trade queens just so that his attack is not as strong, because obviously my attack is much slower right now. He's going to get G4 in one move. But after B5, bishop D5, I have to take it Well, I don't have to take it, but I did take because I didn't want to put my rook on a7. We trade, and then I played e6, which turns out to be the next big strategical mistake, or you could say it's a positional mistake. I thought this was a fine move in the game, but it turns out that it's really bad because my light squared bishop, just doesn't have any like potential in this game now. Yeah, so all I can do is play bishop b7. Bishop d7 doesn't do anything because it's just staring at the edge of the board, and because I put my pawn there, it doesn't stare that way. And after something like knight b6, well, first of all, I have to play knight a7 or rook a7, which sucks. And let's just say, well, first of all, how do I kick his knight out? I can't. Let's just make a random move. Even rook gd1 is a really good move because after something like bishop b7, first of all, his rooks are coming into my position, and I can't do anything about it. And I'm basically paralyzed, actually, because I can't move my rook, can't move my bishop. F7 is weak. I have to keep either my knight or my rook tied to it, and my rook is on the edge of the board. So, yeah, even this position is just like, I didn't respect how totally busted my position was here. And furthermore, just e4. And now I can't even, like, yeah, I'm basically down a piece already by playing e6. I didn't realize it during the game, but yeah, e6 actually just kills my position, which is crazy. So he plays knight e7 to continue. I'm forced to h8. He plays rook d1. Here I played bishop f6. I was trying to kick away this knight, which he moves, and then after I played bishop b7, he counterattacks with bishop e5. So now he's attacking my bishop. If I take here, he takes here with check. I have to move here, and I'm like almost getting mated. Like my king doesn't actually have any squares to go to. So I traded off the bishop. He takes with the knight. And now I made the big tactical blunder of the game, which was f6. So I saw f6 to fork the two knights, and then I'm like, oh wait, I hang the e6 pawn. But I was like, oh wait, if he plays knight takes e6, I can play I'm gonna play rook f e8, and there's no check here. If he moves his knight to, let's say, here, I can take here and do something like this, and it's like he's up 2 pawns, but like at least it's still like somewhat playable. So I was like, okay, knight e6, I'll be fine. So I just played f6. I failed to realize that my g6 pawn is also weak, and yeah, so he sees it, forks me. I lose the exchange, but not only that, he wins another pawn on the way out, and another one. And then after e4, knight d8, or rook d8, trading my rook off, and we get to this position. Here I resigned. I mean, he just collected everything. My whole position just fell apart after that knight fork, and my bishop is actually trapped. Right, I can't go here because of the knight, can't go here, and can't go here. So yeah, no, this position was just dead lost, and I resigned here after just mulling it over for a few minutes. So yeah, this game was, it started off just bad and got worse as the game went on. H5 was fine, it's just that my whole idea of trying to stop knight g4 immediately was not the right idea. I needed to just let him come first and get my counterplay going faster than he can get his, which I don't know why I thought the way I did, but yeah, that's what I did. So overall, I ended the event 1 out of 3. I got 3rd place out of 4 people in my section. I did mention that we combined sections. I did mention we did combine sections. So it was like technically 6, but they gave awards out based on the section you registered for. So in my true section, I only got 3rd out of 4th, which is kind of lame, but Oh well. So I'll put up the final score table thing, whatever you call it. I can never remember what it's called. I'll put up the final table on the result of the tournament somewhere here. And yeah, so you can see I went 1 out of 3. Anthony went 3 out of 3, which was really good for him, so he got first place. But my provisional ratings to start is really good. Much higher than I expected. I was totally expecting it to be in like the 700s, to be honest. But thankfully not. So yeah, that's how it went. I don't know when the next one I'll go to is, but until then, I will see you next time.